Good morning, everybody. Praise the Lord. If we could all usher in from the foyer into the sanctuary, if we could find our seats. I pray everybody's week has been good. Who has enjoyed Brother Mike Easter this past week? It's been such a good week with Brother Easter. Everything has been finely tuned, all of his sermons and everything, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. If you would please stand with me for the reading of the word. We're going to go to the book of Proverbs, and we're going to start in chapter 1. We're going to read the first 5 verses. Book of Proverbs, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Then after that, you may be seated. And it says, "The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion." Verse 5, "A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels." You may be seated. And the book of Proverbs, which all the quizzers should know because that's the main book that we are in for this season. And if you would please, side note, keep the Bible quiz team in the Bible quiz department, in your prayers. We have our first quiz this next Saturday in Farmville. So if you could keep us in your prayers so that we get the W. Amen. All right. I don't quiz. I'm a coach, so I'm there to win. So if we're going to be honest about it. I'm just playing. It's about hiding God's word in your heart. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about understanding, knowledge, wisdom. This will be the first installment of wisdom of the book of Proverbs. We will see if the next time I speak, we go into the second installment. But we've all heard this saying, "In all thy getting, get understanding," right? Today we will be talking about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Now, I like to read, which is such a weird phrase for me to say. I never thought I would say that I enjoy to read, but since I've gotten out of high school, I enjoy to learn things now. So not when I was in high school when it counted, but now when it, I don't show much for it. Now I like to learn. So, but I like to read and learn about specifically athletes, how they train, work out, how they play, how they read a playbook. Obviously, I've told you at least once, I like race cars. So I like to watch racing and motocross and see how they work. And they have this segment called The Science Behind Motocross or Supercross. And I like to watch that because I get to see how the bike works and all that stuff. I like all that weird stuff. But specifically today, this past week or so, I have read on Kobe Bryant. So Kobe is one of the best to play the game. If you think he's the greatest, or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, we can have that discussion after. But today we're going to talk about him, why he has been called one of the greats. We're going to discuss his routine. Now he has a routine and a time frame and everything, but the order has not changed. But his timing of the schedule has changed. But with having, getting married and kids and all that stuff, your time changes, but the order has never changed. So Kobe would wake up at about 4 a.m., and this has stayed pretty consistent. Wakes up at 4 a.m. every single day. Goes to practice by himself for about 2.5, 3 hours. So he's in the gym practicing by himself, headphones on, just in his own world for about 3 hours. So about from 4 to 7 or 4 to 6 or so, he's practicing by himself, getting reps in. Then he'll go back home, take the kids to school. Then he'll go back to work. So he would go back to the gym for another, let's say an 8-hour day. So he's getting about 11 hours worth of practice in. Now, In 2008, Kobe had been chosen to be on the USA Olympics team, which some of us may know. Now, one of the days, the whole team probably came from the coach. He said, hey, we're all going to wake up. We're all going to go down for breakfast at the same time. We're going to eat as a team. So they all get down there, and it's whatever time, 7:30, 8 in the morning. Everybody done slept in. They're all, good to go. They had a good stretch in the morning. They're about to go to breakfast. They're about to have a good time. Walk down there. Guess who's already at the table? Kobe Bryant. He's already been up for his 3 hours, practicing, ice on his knees, sipping coffee, waiting for the guys to come down from the bedroom. Now, at the moment of his untimely passing, he had won five championships. 2 of those, he was voted the MVP, and he was All-Star. He was voted on the All-Star team 18 times. 4 times of those 18s, he was the MVP of the All-Star game. And many more accolades that I could go on and on about. Okay, but why are you going to tell me about Kobe? We're here to have church. Okay? In order to explain to you how he understood what had to be done to be a legend of the game of basketball. That's why I told you. And I told you that to go into my next point. Do you know how much a human brain can withstand and how much information a human brain can hold? We have gone over right brain and left brain, which one of them is the creative brain, the one that looks at art and the one that makes music and anything creative. And then you have the other side of the brain, which is analytical, which is, 2 + 2 is 4, right? A² + B² = C². So I have studied and explained this and how the importance of music and the content of it that it is, because there is an institute in Canada that performs the most painful surgery known to man, and that is the surgery on the femur. In order to do this surgery, the amount of anesthesia that you would need to put you under almost kills the patient. However, if you let the patient listen to 15 minutes of classical music, they only require half the anesthesia. So, we have talked about the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and so on. But there's so much more to the average brain. Now, the average brain weighs about 3 pounds. Male brains are 10% larger than a female's brains. However, I can't remember when to take the trash out. So, Now, just because your brain is bigger and weighs more does not mean you are smarter, okay? So, technically, the amount of information your brain can store is unlimited. We all know the national anthem. We all know 2 + 2 is 4. We all know A² + B² = C². We all know what pi is, 3.14, blah, 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 blah. It's infinite, okay? And the world, our society, has turned March 14th into National Pi Day. So, get it? March 14th, 314. Now, the human brain is so powerful that it can power a light bulb. So, in those superhero movies, when they have all the wires attached to somebody in their head and like their chest and then their arms and everything, if somebody did that to you, your brain could power a light bulb. So, some have even put a number on the amount of information that you can retain. Some have stated a quadrillion bytes of information. So to break that down, your brain doesn't stop growing until you're 25, right? So I'm 26. Is as smart as I'm going to get. So at age 8, a child can learn up to 333 trillion bytes of information. Maybe the verse "train up a child" has some clearer meaning. Now, getting into the book of Proverbs, which is why we are all here, it's a book of wisdom and the consequences of either side of the spectrum of good and evil. So, King Solomon wrote most of the book of Proverbs. He also wrote Songs of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and he wrote 2 Psalms. King Solomon is known as the wisest man who ever lived. 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 9 through 14 says, "Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?" And the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Ye have not, because ye asked not. And God said unto him, Because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, right? He asked it in order to rule other people. He didn't ask it for himself. He asked it to be a servant to other people. Neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and an understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall any arise like unto thee. And I have also given thee that thou hast not asked both riches and honor. So the fact that you humbled yourself and asked me for something to rule your people instead of the benefits to yourself, I want to give you even more than what you asked for. So that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. Verse 14, and if thou wilt walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days. This would tell you that if Solomon humbled himself and asked for wisdom and understanding to have God help him lead a people, he may have found that to be true, which is why he wrote Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and verse 6. The Bible agrees with itself, even with multiple authors of different books. So, King Solomon ruled Israel with wisdom and over 40 years. Through this prayer and this plea in 1 Kings, Solomon was able to achieve many things, such as building the first temple on Mount Moriah. In 1 Kings chapter 4, we can find that Solomon wrote 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. Now, well, that's all well and good, but what's a proverb? Okay, a proverb is a wise saying or a piece of advice. The Hebrew word kokmah translates to skill or applied knowledge. When I was in high school, I would have paid you to take me anywhere else. I did not like high school. I hardly even like gym and lunch, which are like the 2 most popular ones. If you didn't like school, you were like, well, at least I have gym or lunch. I hardly even like those things. I only like 10 people. I was like, I don't even want to be here. This is so lame. Now, if I would have applied myself, like my mom would always say, if you would just apply yourself a little bit more, you have so much potential, Daniel. Like, yes, Mom, I'm sorry. Which is why I say now that I like learning things, it's kind of like backwards, because now I don't have straight A's to show for it. Now I just have information that I ramble on about and whatever. Ramble on about my truck club and race cars and different cars and bass and music things and bass stuff. And Hannah just, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever you say, yep, mm-hmm. Just wherever, in the living room, in the kitchen. Okay, whatever, yep. Oh, really? Oh, okay. And you're like, I know. And you're like, okay. You're like, you're not even listening. Whatever. So, however, there's always room for improvement, right? Which is one thing that I live by. There's always room for improvement. If you're not learning, you're not growing, right? Okay, so the Lord directed my path and blessed me with a career in mechanics, and I haven't looked back. So allow me to explain a situation that I have ran into multiple times. So let's say your car has cruise control. Okay, does anybody love cruise? Nobody? Just me? Okay. So your car is cruise, right? So you're driving down the highway, let's say 64 or 95, and you go to hit your cruise control and set it at 65, 70, what have you. Well, it doesn't work. So you hit it and you just go. But you start slowing down. So you're like, why is my cruise control not working? Well, your car may have a light on in the dash. It could be like the traction control light and your ABS light, which with Chryslers is mainly a wheel speed sensor, because that sensor reads how fast your wheel is turning, and it locks it at that speed, right? So, but if one of your sensors is bad or it's not reading correctly, the computer shuts down the whole system. So you can't use it at all. So it will shut down that system and everything if everything's not at 100% within spec. So I just think it's interesting to know how things work like that. So, but in order to understand the Bible, so if you understand that concept that it just shrinks everything and shuts down the whole system, in order to understand the Bible and how that system works, you have to read and understand and study the Bible. So, starting in chapter 1, verse 1 through 5, we read it once. So if we start in verse 5 and go backwards, right? We start in 5 and then we'll go to verse 2. So a wise man will hear and will increase learning. A man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. Solomon is saying that a wise man will hear and increase learning. A wise man will learn and grow, get smarter, gain wisdom from other people, apply it, and then you get smarter, correct? So, everyone remember Brother Easter's first service here 2 Wednesdays ago. He taught, if you, then I, as a point of view from God. If you walk 5 feet, then I will walk the 5 feet. If you draw near, then I will draw near. Okay, well, if you consider yourself wise, then you should hear and increase learning. Why? Well, verse 2 and 4 spell out in order for a man to know wisdom, he must first hear. Through hearing and the increase of learning, you gain wisdom and instruction. You gain experience, you gain smarts. With instruction, you know how to obey and follow orders because you know the end result, right? So parents, if you have a kid who wants to touch the stove after you just cooked and you said, don't touch that, it's hot, and they look at you like, I don't believe you, you're lying. And they go up there and they just look at you while they're doing it. And you're like, don't do it, you're going to burn yourself, don't do that, it's hot. And they're like, no, it's not, you're lying to me. And then they touch it and then like, oh my God, it's hot. And you're like, I just told you that, right? So, but they in order to know that it's hot, they had to go through the process, correct? So, your lovely, lovely child decided to touch the stove even though it was burning hot. And my dog, Lola, loves human food. I mean, what dog does not? But if Hannah or myself made tea or whatever, used a pot and brought it over and kind of was like scooping into a bowl or whatever, she's got this new thing now where she jumps at everything. So she jumped to like sniff it. And I was like, it just takes one time. Just hit your nose on the bottom of that pot one time and you'll stop doing it. I promise you're going to burn your nose right off. But parents, you know to tell your kids these things. Why? Because you already know the outcome. Because you see it. Your child may not yet, but to perceive the words of understanding in verse 2. Literally distinguish words or meaning to discern between good and evil. Verse 3, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity. To receive this verse means to receive the discipline of all the attributes of one who is upright in a relationship with God. Verse 4 says, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. Once you hear and increase learning and gain wisdom and instruction, you then will know how to talk to people kindly, and you will know how to then give knowledge to the young man. Has anyone encountered a moment where someone told you how to do your job, and they came in and was like, no, I wouldn't do it that way? You're like, well, I'm doing the job, so back off. So, being a mechanic, especially when your car does something weird, all of a sudden, everybody's a mechanic. This one time, this lady came in to the dealer I was working at, and she said, my battery's dead, I need a new battery. So the person who writes up all my tickets called back to the shop and said, hey, I need you to get a jump box, a jump starter, come out to the lane, jump start this car, drive it in the back, and replace the battery. I said, okay, I can do that. Went and grabbed the jump starter, brought it out, put it on the battery, and it was reading a full charge. And I said, that's weird. I shouldn't be doing that. If it's dead, it should be reading like half or less than half, if it's truly dead. So I said, okay. So I got in the car. Well, first I got her keys. Got into the car, put the key in the ignition, turned it twice. Everything came on. Windows went up and down. Radio came on. All the lights in the dash came on and went off. The lights in the car came on, went off. And I was like, this battery's not dead. So I tried to start it, and it went click and died. And I was like, that's your starter. That's not your battery. And I was like, how did you get it here? And she said, well, I tried it like 17 times, then it started. And I was like, that does not explain your battery. If your battery did that, you couldn't even turn the key. It would have locked it out. And she's like, oh, okay. And I was like, okay. So that's $600 for your starter. It's $100 for the starter and $500 because you made me do that without that even being an issue. That's why it's $600. She swore up and down for 15 minutes that it was a battery. And I was like, no, ma'am, it is not. All right. So if we follow on to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 6 through 7, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning. If at all possible, can we all agree that God knows everything? Okay, awesome. Psalm chapter 147, verse 4, he knows and he numbered all the stars. Knows all the stars. Matthew 10 and 30, he knows the number of the hairs on your head. Psalm chapter 50, verse 11, he knows all the fowls of the mountains. He created and knows everything. So by revering him and humbling yourself to him, that already starts the process of learning and understanding. However, don't overstep the last part of that verse. It says, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So, being a fool is equal to doing the exact opposite of verse 5, which says to increase learning. So, wise equals increased learning. A fool despises that which is godly. There is a direct contrast between chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Chapter 2, verse 1 says, my son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee. So again, Proverbs chapters 1 through chapter 9 is written in the light of a parent talking to a child or a father talking to a child. Here, the parent is saying, look, take everything I say, take my commandments, take my rules, take my phrase, take everything that I'm teaching you and protect them because later you will need them. Verse 1 is saying, look, I need you to hear what I'm telling you and I need you to protect them. I need you to hide them. Verse 2 says, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. I need you to protect these commandments or rules so that you are able to perch your ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. So between the two verses of chapter 2 and the first 5 or so verses in chapter 1, you will get this formula. Ready? Hear, listen, apply, gain. You hear the word, you hear the rules, the teaching, the commandments. You protect them, you hide them, you protect them, you take care of them. Listen, incline thine ear to wisdom. Apply it. Apply thine heart to understanding. You hear it, you listen to it. So you got to know who's talking. So if somebody's talking to me, you go, okay, well, he's talking. So then you go over there and then you listen to it. Like, oh, okay. And then you step back and then you think about it. And then you figure out, well, how can I apply it? And then you would apply that word. Then once you apply it, then you gain the wisdom that they had that they taught you, right? Verse 3 through 5. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. If you cry, plead, ask for knowledge. If you have not because ye ask not. And if you cry out for understanding, verse 4 is comparing wisdom to treasures. So wisdom is a commodity, correct? Wisdom is a commodity. Not everyone can have it. Verses 3 through 5 culminates in verses 5 and 6. And it says, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom. Out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. If you hear, listen, apply, then the Lord will give you your gain, which is wisdom. Now, if you will all please stand, in conclusion, I want to be as close as I can to God, as close as possible. One way for sure I know that I will be able to achieve that is by reading and understanding his word and applying it to my life.